Hey friends, welcome back to Willow Creek Homestead. My name is Kenzie if you are new around here. And for today's video, we are just going to be doing several preservation projects involving tomatoes. This is one of my favorite tomatoes that I grew this year, and it's actually new for me. It's called a vintage wine tomato, and I'm really hoping that My Gardener has it on their website again for next year because it came out absolutely beautiful, and I will leave a link down below. But the first thing that we are going to work on preserving together is salsa, and my husband likes a very thin salsa. So what I do is I just let my food processor do the work for me. If you want these like chunkier, you basically are just going to blitz this like a couple times until your desired texture. This is another tomato from My Gardener that I grew this year that I wanted to show you guys. I believe it's called Big Rainbow. It came out absolutely stunning. So after I get my tomatoes done, I went down to my pantry and grabbed some onions, and I just repeated the same process. I'm going to blitz up the onions in the food processor along with the peppers. And I will leave the full recipe down below. So don't worry about having to write down anything that I say, but you do need to know the tomato ratio because that is going to determine the rest of the ingredients. So after I get all of that done and combined, I'm going ahead and adding in some cilantro along with some cumin, a bunch of cumin, and a bunch of garlic powder. And then I am also going to go ahead and throw in a package from Miss Wages. This is the mild salsa. They do make spicy versions. You could throw in hot peppers to this as well. And something I wanted to mention is the recipe is going to call for jalapenos, but just know that you can use whatever pepper that you would like to. That is a question that I get from new canners all the time is if the peppers matter that you are putting in this, and no, it does not. If it called for mild peppers, feel free to use hot peppers. It does not matter at all. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add some citric acid into my jars. And that's another question that I get all the time. I personally prefer the citric acid over lemon juice because I just think that the lemon juice changes the flavor of my salsa, and I don't particularly like the acidity flavor that it gives. So if you are looking to mild that down, I would definitely recommend trying citric acid in your tomato products. It just makes it taste better and will help preserve the color long term. I have even heard of people using citric acid when they pressure can because it preserves the color and helps with the oxidization process. So if you have ever been off put by the lemon juice, definitely try the citric acid. That is what I use and definitely recommend. And then I'm just always going back and fixing headspace. Anytime you're canning, you always want to make sure that you have that headspacing correct. I believe for this particular recipe, it is a half inch of headspace, but I will leave that down below for you. And then I am just making sure that all of those rims are really good and wiped off. And then we are going to go ahead and get our lids and bands placed on these. And something that I really do like about the thinner salsa, if you have ever tried to make Mexican style rice with salsa in your Instant Pot, sometimes because the salsa is super thick, depending on what type you're using, it will cause your rice to scorch at the bottom. And using a thinner base salsa requires you to use less water and it prevents that from doing it. So it's really nice. I've had my Mexican style rice ruined multiple times because the salsa was too thick. So actually for the thinner salsa, that does work very well. And then after these are done canning, I'm just going to go ahead and get them out of my canner. Always make sure that you are placing a towel down below, especially if you have a super cold granite countertop like I do. I saw a video where a lady did not place a rag down below these and her jars exploded whenever she was taking them out, and it was absolutely terrible. So please always make sure you put a rag down after the hot jars come out of the canner. Something else I wanted to mention is tomato products are really prone to separation. You can see that in the jars, but all you have to do once they come out of the canner is just give them a little shake and they will go right back to normal. You might have to shake them a couple of times to like hold the texture and shape of the contents in the jar, but if you ever are noticing separation, it's a really easy fix. And especially before you go to serve something, if you have noticed it, just go ahead and give it a shake and it'll go right back to normal. So after I get all of these wiped off really good, I'm just going to go ahead and get some labels placed on them. And then these are ready for the pantry shelf. And it felt really good to knock out this huge project on this day in particular. So super happy to have them for the winter months. And then the next recipe that we are moving on to is tomato juice. Now, this is probably the easiest recipe on the planet, especially if you are a new canner. I would highly recommend giving this a try because there is nothing like having homemade tomato juice on your pantry shelf ready to go all season long. So all we're gonna do is just boil some tomatoes, and I put just a little bit of water at the bottom. I wouldn't even say an inch, just a little tiny bit to make sure that our tomatoes aren't scorching. And then you're just gonna let your tomatoes get really, really soft and go on a low boil for probably 30 to 40-ish minutes. You can use whatever kind of tomatoes you would like. This is a really good way to just use up some extras that you might have lying around. And then the product that you are left with after you strain all of the skins and seeds away from the tomato juice is just absolutely beautiful, little to no ingredients. And it's just really, really nice to have on hand for a multitude of different recipes. I also really like using this for like homemade Bloody Marys. And I was thinking about this as I'm voicing this over right now. You could do a spicy version, so you could include some hot peppers with this and let it boil. You could also do like a garlic based tomato juice and even make that spicy. That would be really, really good. I'm sure there's a lot of really, really delicious variations that you could do with this, and it's just really, really simple. Typically, I reserve all of the juice from my salsa whenever I would make it like chunkier before my husband kind of picked that he wanted it a little bit more thin. I would save all of that juice, and basically that would be my tomato juice. But now that we have switched to doing our salsa, that has forced me to can tomato juice just by itself. And honestly, I really kind of prefer this because the flavor is just way, way better. I did go ahead and add just a little bit of salt, but you could throw in other seasonings to this as well. Even if you wanted it like herb based, you could definitely do that. But after I get all of my jars loaded up, I just go ahead and get them in the canner. And let me tell you, friends, this pot filler has come in handy so freaking much. It's not even funny. The only downside of having a pot filler is it's cold water only, which I don't particularly care for, but it's so nice not having to carry this huge freaking canner back and forth from my sink every like time that I want to use it. So super, super awesome kitchen edition. But after I got them out of the canner, these are ready to go on the pantry shelf as well. So for this last recipe, I guess we're going to dabble in the dark side a little bit because this is considered a rebel canning recipe, which I don't really understand. I'm going to be honest. We're going to be doing some diced tomatoes, and tomatoes are tested and approved whole. They're tested and approved in a multitude of different ways, but they are not tested and approved as a dice in a jar, which to me doesn't make much sense. So if you are not comfortable doing anything that is not tested and approved, definitely don't do the recipe. But for me personally, I am comfortable doing so. So that is what we are going to be doing now. And for this diced tomato recipe, it's super, super simple. This is the only way that I have seen people do it. And that is where you basically just dice your tomato, and then you are going to fill your jar to, I believe it's a ½ inch headspace as well. And then the juice from the diced tomatoes will accumulate as you process them. So you'll be able to see that this starts accumulating juice as I'm putting it into the jar. But then once they go through the canner, it will also start accumulating juice. So you do not need to add water or anything like that to this. And this is another one of those recipes where you could add seasonings, you could add a multitude of different things. And we use diced tomatoes all the time. My taco soup that I make, I use diced tomatoes in that. I also do a really delicious taco casserole. So having diced tomatoes is really, really nice for us, especially throughout the winter months. And again, this is just a great way to use up extra tomatoes if you don't feel like, preserving them in a different way or freezing them. If I have smaller quantities of the tomatoes that are coming in, this is kind of how I like to preserve those up for later use. I had 36 tomato plants this year while trying to build a house, so I had them literally coming through my ears all summer long. So any little way that I could preserve these up, I was. I dehydrated a bunch of them as well, and we still have tomato products that we need to make. I have a ton in my freezer, so we got to get some sauces and a whole bunch of other things made up. But for this, again, after I get the jars filled up, I'm just filling the canner up. I believe the processing time is like 35 to 40 minutes. It is a little bit lengthier, but then after they process, here they are all coming out of the canner. So I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for watching. Have a fantastic week, and I will see you in the next one.